Good morning and welcome to the continuing session of perceptions and attribution. Here we will try to understand the application of perception in organizations in that and the most important perception, how we apply it to organization, the process of perception and principles of perception, how we utilize in organization is mainly for understanding other people, and that falls under the domain of person perception. So, in this particular discussion we are going to cover various aspects of person perception. Person perception is categorized, the discussion is categorized under three main headings. First is social perceptions, second is impression management, and in third we are going to discuss one of very important area which is called attributions and attribution theories. And next we will again discuss some of the errors which happens in person perception and how person perception gets utilized in some situations in organization. That is the total objective of this discussion today, and we will start with social perception. Social perception consists of those processes in organizations by which we interpret people, and then how we categorize them and we try to form certain impressions of them. The social aspects of perception, it really plays a very important role in organizations in person perception. So, when we are talking of social perception, actually there are three actors in the situation. If you can understand, means like there firstly there you have the person making the perception, means the perceiver, and secondly we have the perceived person, and thirdly we also have the situation or the context. And there could be like various characteristics which are specific to each of these people, like the perceiver, the perceived, and the both, and the situation per se, the situation context. So, in the last discussion, if we remember, like we have discussed about the different principles of organization, different principles of interpretation, and like how interpretation occurs and what are the factors playing roles, and we have categorized those into factors very specific to the objects being perceived, or factors specific to the people making the perception, and we have put it under two headings of internal factors and external factors, and like the and we like the novelty in the situation, the uniqueness in the situation, the brightness of the things being perceived, and the size, then the height, all these things were some of the characteristics which are very specific to the object or person being perceived. Like if somebody is very attractive in nature, or somebody is wearing a very bright dress, and or it is very soberly dressed, somebody is very tall, somebody is very fat, and all these things may attract your attention, or somebody has a very pleasant personality. So, and very like or an extrovert way of behaving, or really a very introvert. So, whatever distinguishes that person, any characteristics of that person which distinguishes that person from the rest of the people present around is going to attract the attention. So, this again is determined by the figure and ground effect, or if the person is similar to other situation, other people present around, or similar to other people, or is interacting with a particular group of people, then we try to form perception about that person, about his social connections and all these things. All these are based, again, if you remember, on the principles of organization, the Gestalt principles of organization of figure and ground, contrast, your proximity, similarity, continuity, all these things. And to the these are some of the characteristics of the perceiver, the perceived person. Similarly, the perceiver, who is also a human being, he has similar personality pattern, interest, then your motivational level, and all these things when will help him to pay attention to certain factors in certain person and ignore certain facts about that person. So, which will help his selection process. The characteristics within a person also influences his selection of the of stimuli, like the cues given by the perceived person, and select some and ignore others based on his own personal preferences, motivation, needs, aspirations, personality pattern, whatever, and try to interpret it based on his knowledge, education, the storehouse of knowledge or schemata, all these things. So, these are characteristics of perceiver and the perceived person, which influence the social perception. Also, a very unique role is played by the situation in which the person is perceived, or the perceiver perceives the perceived person. So, the context gives a new meaning to the whole process of perception. So, when two people A and B meet in situation X, and which is quite different from when A and B meets in situation Y, if the nature of the situation X and Y are varying from time with respect to time and other characteristics, then the way of interaction may vary, the way of seeing that person may vary. And so, situational factors also, whether it is a formal situation, whether it is an informal situation, whether it is like other people are present when these two people are present or not, like whether you are perceived individually or you are perceived as a part of a group, all these things matter in person perception, in the category of social perception. So, characteristics of the perceiver, characteristics of the perceived person, and characteristics of the situation, these three all blend together to influence each other and give meaning to the whole process of perception. And there are numerous important factors, and which are one or three of the most important factors are, of course, like attributions, which we will discuss in details, like where we try to give meaning and impose certain characteristics which either belongs to the person or to the external situation, and we try to interpret that situation in that way, whether it is whether it is a situational effect or it is a personal effect. We will discuss it at the latter part of this lecture. Next is, of course, stereotype, and third is halo effect. So, in stereotype, what happens, like if I am meeting a new person for the first time without having much of his like background information, but I have a schemata, a storehouse of knowledge about certain groups of person, and or certain religious groups, or of certain professionals, and from a previous knowledge, preconceived knowledge, we have some idea framed, like this person, these group of people who are belonging to these professions generally behave in this way, generally they dress in that way, generally they talk in this way, this is their way of communication. If we have those things preconceived idea ready in our mind. Then when I meet a new person about whom I do not have a very much background information except one or two, like this particular person is belonging to this particular profession or to some ethnic or religious groups or particular to some country, and then what we do, without knowing much details about the individual per se, then this background knowledge, which is called the schemata, we try to map this person with that background knowledge. And if we have a very strong emotions or attitudes developed to that some professions or your religious or ethnic groups and all these factors, we have and what we try to do, we try to interact with this new person based on that particular schemata that we have, that particular storehouse of knowledge that we have, expecting that with the basic premise that generally people of this group, this category behave in this way, therefore it, and we like respond to this group of people in this way because this person, this new person that we are meeting resembles some of the characteristics of the profession or the group that I am having the schemata about. Then this person will, because these groups generally behave in this way and we interact in that way to that group, so we can also start our interaction or expect the same type of behavior from this new person. So these stereotype is generally looking, it's helpful for us to start our discussions with someone whom we are meeting for the first time. It's till then it's fine, but if we are trying to be judgmental about a person, we are trying to tell something positive or negative about a person and form certain attitudes about a person based only on the stereotype of that particular group which this person may or like he may belong to, and taking like okay, this person is similar to his fellow people, then that is not a very desirable situation, because we have to consider the individuality of that person. That person may belong to certain profession or groups and may share some of their ideas, but may be unique in his or own world view or ways of interacting or communication, which is very unique to that person and not a part of the very common to the group in general that you are talking about. So, trying to impose your one's thought process based on the general knowledge that we have and trying to it's again depends on the process of closure, because there is a gap of information about the new person that you are meeting, and we try to give closure to this based on the stereotype that you are having about this person and try to close that loop and feel mentally comfortable and reduce our anxiety of not knowing this new person is not something which is very desirable sometimes, because we may stereotypes sometimes may lead to form negative opinion about the very new person without trying to know that person as an individual. So, when we are trying to interact with a new person, so it's better along with the general idea that we have about that particular group of people or then we or the profession or whatever, we must be trying to explore the uniqueness in the new individual we are interacting with, and try to interact from that individual perspective, because each individual has some unique characteristics and they differ from person to person in spite of sharing certain common ideas or properties or characteristics with a which is very common to a group. Next comes like when you are talking of halo effect. In halo effect what happens is we are trying to like overestimate or project person's single characteristics on which is like influencing our decision making regarding that person as a total individual. Like if I am good at task A, does not mean that I am good at task B, C, D, E also, but or like if I am good in one of the roles that of the different roles that we play in our life does not mean that we are good in the other roles also. But what happens because I am good at one role or good at one task or good in one of the attributes like I like I am very attractive in nature or pleasant in nature, it sometimes overshadows the other negatives or other drawbacks that we may be having, and we try to judge a person based on that halo, like the light. Halo means the light, the circle of light that we have around, and because that overshadows the negatives, and we are not trying, we overlook those things based on the halo effect formed because of we giving more, we as a perceiver giving more importance to one of the factors or one of present within the perceived person. So, this halo effect may sometimes affect the decision making in the organization while we are in the selection process or while we are trying to map the right person to the right kind of job. Because if we are to map a person to the right kind of job, we have to map we have to see whether a person possesses the competencies required for the particular type of job and the particular type of role. So, if I like person A due to certain characteristics present, which is like general personality pattern, or he is good at one task, and then we form a positive idea about that person. Okay, this person is very good. So, doesn't mean, it always doesn't mean like that the person will be suitable for the particular role, present role that we are thinking about, and that so we have to be very specific about that, and we have to judge the person from like based on what he is good at the present time with respect to the present situation, the task at hand which is in discussion, and not like get our decisions affected by the halo effect that we are, or the very high idea that we are having about that particular person whom we are trying to discuss about, based on some other characteristics which may or may not be directly related to the competency which is required for solving the particular job which is of discussion at the present point of time. So, you have to remove that halo effect and then see whether the attributes of the person, the characteristics of the person are matching with the requirements of the specific job at hand, or whether he is suitable enough for in the present situation. So, these three are important parts of discussion, like while we are talking of social perception. Next, we come to the discussion on which is impression management. Also called self presentation, impression management is the process by which people attempt to manage or control perception of others form which others form of them. So, this is a characteristics of the people to present them in such a way to impress others in a socially desirable way. So, if you read between the lines that is written over here, so first is when we talk of it's a self presentation technique. So, it will depend on like the characteristics of the person. Also, when we are talking of self presentation technique means like we have to question like who is prone to this self presentation. Does everybody is prone to self presentation, or we have people who will be more in self presentation and people who are less in self presentation. And here where we come to the question of or here comes the importance of self monitors. So, people who are higher self monitors, what they will do is they will always try to present themselves in a desirable social way and try to appear to fulfill all the demands from the external situations and try to appear in a positive light to others, and they are very good at responding to situational demands and try to monitor their behavior pattern, their personality pattern in such a way to suit the needs of the particular situation or appear to suit the needs of the particular situation. But people who are less in the degree of self monitors, they will like to present themselves in the way as they actually are and not modify themselves to in such a way to appear to be desirable or fit the situational demands. So, people who are high in self, who are high self monitors will go for more self presentation in which people manage to appear in the positive light, and they try to manipulate the way their way of presenting themselves will manipulate the way the others form certain ideas about this particular person, and they will try to appear in a positive light as per the judgment about that person is considered. So, that is called impression management. How we try to manage the impressions, the ideas that others form about us. And there are 5 techniques of tactics of impression management. These 5 techniques are: number A, ingratiation, where they seek to be viewed positively by flattering others or offering to do favors to them. They seek to be viewed positively by flattering others or offering to do favors to them. Next is self promotion. They tout their abilities and competence. Third is they seek to be viewed as dedicated by going above and beyond the call of duty. Fourth is supplication, where they seek to be viewed as needing help because of limitations. And fifth one, intimidation, they seek to be viewed as powerful and threatening. So, these 5 techniques, if we can understand, is going to help people to manage impression in different situations. And the two most important situations where impression management techniques are utilized in organization is during the interviews and of course during the time of performance appraisals. So, what happens, like it has been, research has found, like most of the interviewers make certain selection due to the like impressions they have got about that particular person, and the important like impression management techniques adopted by the interviewee, and in many cases the actual person per se or the capabilities of the person to for that which makes the best fit with the requirements of the job get ignored, and as a result some desirable candidates with the better qualities which best fit with the necessary requirements of the job do not get a chance, and people who have better who can manage the impressions well get selected in the interview process. And the impression management technique which has been used mostly by the candidates in interview situation is that of which is called self promotion. They try to sell themselves, they try to appear in a positive light as per the competency is involved through different techniques of self promotion. And another important thing which is position, another important area where impression management technique is used in organization is of course during time of promotions. And here the technique of the tactic of impression management which is most important is that of ingratiation where we try to do the where we try to impress others by flattering or doing certain favors to the person who are in the position to make judgment about our promotions, and this is called ingratiation. So, we will try to discuss over here some of the impression management techniques as used strategies, and we have tried to classify it over two headings like promotion enhancing strategy and demotion reduction strategy. Like in promotion enhancing strategy, what happens, we try to seek maximum responsibility for a positive outcome, or we try to look in a better than we really are. And in this the 4 different classifications are of course like entitlements. People feel like they have not been given credit for the positive outcome. Next is enhancement. Here the employees try to point out that they really did more thing and had bigger impact than the original thought, and they have not received their due credit. in obstacle disclosures, what people do is they try to identify either personal health or family issues or organizational issues like lack of resources and cooperation, which were obstacles in their way of achieving certain things, certain outcome, and they try to put the impression that they got that big result, that positive outcome, despite the big obstacles that was there in their way of achieving that positive outcome, and they should be deserving a lot of credit for it, for doing the thing, achieving the outcome, positive outcome, in spite of being in spite of the presence of big obstacles. Number 4 is association, where the employees seen whether they make sure that they belong to the right group of people at the right point of time. They try to engage they try to mention their names as parts of a very well known group, or in well connected with someone very big personality, so that you also get to, like, you form the impression like this person is well connected and have been parts of successful projects, or he is like well connected with a well known person, so he is also of that same nature and that same type. When you are talking of demotion preventive strategy, so what we try to do is we try to minimize the responsibility for some negative effect, or to stay like out of trouble. So first is accounts, where employees attempt to excuse or justify their actions, like because they were not, like some example of where they are not able to do something in time because there was another thing of high very priority assignment was there. Next is apologies, apologize to boss for some negative events, and then gives the impression that the individual is really sorry about it and indicates that it is not going to happen again. Then dissatisfaction, where if something goes wrong with which the person is indirectly associated, then dissatisfaction is disassociation is where they will try to disassociate their name from that happening by telling or from the negative outcome. They will disassociate their name by telling, okay, we fought for the right thing, but we were not heard, our decisions were overruled, and so actually I am not the person who can be blamed for any wrong happening, because I tried my best. I tried my best to speak about the right thing, but because other more powerful people were there, or people with different intentions were there, I didn't get the positive outcome, and in that way I give the impression of dissociating my name from the your negative outcome and the onus of responsibility for that negative outcome. So these are three are demotion preventing strategy. So there could be other techniques like flattery, which is an ingratiation technique, which we take during the promotion phases, and we always say like yes to someone, so yes to the person who is in the decision making power, so that he does all, his ego is boosted the other person's ego is boosted because I get a very good subordinate, a good follower who always appears to say yes and never challenges whatever whatever I tell that person to do, boost the ego of the person making the judgment, who is in the position to reward me with certain things. And these are called ingratiation techniques, which are taken during some of the interviews to appear in a positive light and get the like either the job or the promotion, etc. Next we come to the discussion of like attribution theory. Attribution theory is where we come to know, or is how people may interpret the reasons or causes for their behavior. Why something is happening in this way and to whom the cause can be attributed. So, this is coming under the domain of attribution theory. So, it is a process of perceptual interpretation where the people will try to assess the causes of certain event and then attribute the responsibility of the outcome for that event, and third is evaluate the personal qualities of the person involved in that event. So, there are three parts to it. First, I will try to understand the causes of certain event. Next, I will try to assess the responsibility of each particular for the outcome, like who is responsible, the person per se or situations, and then we evaluate the personal qualities of the people involved in that event. So, what we try to say whether certain behavior is internally caused or it is externally caused. When we tell like it is internally caused, then what happens? So, behaviors in it, the behaviors are thought to be the reasons of which is happening due to causes residing within the individual, or it's under the control of that particular individual. When we are talking of external cause, means these external causes are causes which are external to the individual and over which the person generally does not have any control. So, there could be two categories: internally caused behavior and externally caused behavior. Now, this attribution, it's the Kelly's theory of attribution tells like there are three again important pointers to determine whether the behavior is internally caused or externally caused, and these three pointers are called like one is called the consensus, second is consistency, and third is distinctiveness. Consensus, consistency, distinctiveness. When you are talking of consensus, means we try to judge a person, we try to see whether other persons are behaving in the same way as the person we are judging. So, in attribution, what we are trying to attribute is certain qualities and responsibilities of certain things done to a particular person, and we are forming a judgment about some particular person. So, when we are talking of consensus, it means we are trying to find out other things remaining same, that is very important, other things remaining same, whether other people present at the same present around this person or other people generally will behave in the same way, as in the same manner as this particular person about whom we are making the judgment is behaving. So, that is called consensus. If other people about like who is also face the similar situation, if other people who has faced the similar situation behaves in the similar way, we can say like there is a consensus. And if others do behave similarly, then we tell like consensus is high, but if other people do not behave similarly, then we tell consensus is low. Consistency. Consistency is which the person we are judging acts the same way at other times. The extent to which the person we are judging acts in the same way at other times also. So, the same person, whether his behavior is consistent over a particular period of time or not, and which is not very specific to today's situations. So, the crucial factor for decision over here is time. Does the person respond the same way over time? So, if that person does similarly over at the same at other times also, then consistency is high, but if he or she does not, then consistency is low. Third is distinctiveness. Distinctiveness is the extent to which this particular person behaves in the same way in other situations and other contexts also, or this is a very unique situation in which that person has behaved. So, here the focus is on the situation. So, the extent to which this person behaves in the same way in others contexts. If he or she behaves in the same way in other situations, we tell distinctiveness is low, but if he or she behaves differently, then distinctiveness is high. So, we have like three defining characteristics. One is of course consensus, second is consistency, and third is distinctiveness. And we can tell both there are two parts to it, high and low, high and low, high and low of both of all these three, consensus, consistency and distinctiveness. Now is how do we attribute the causality, and we say the causality is that in which and whether we tell whether it is a situational attribute or it belongs to the person. So, if we say like if we go in this way like consensus high and low, then we have consistency high and low, and we have distinctiveness high and low. Then if the consensus is high, if consensus is high, if consistency is low, and the distinctiveness is high. If consensus is high, consistency is low, and distinctiveness is high, we attribute the certain causes to situations. But if consensus is low, consistency is high and distinctiveness is low, we tell it belongs to individual dispositional attributes. So, if we can see, suppose a person is coming late to office on certain day, and it gets reported that the person is coming late for 10 to 15 minutes and some actions needed to be taken about that person. So, instead of jumping into the conclusion and attributing it, telling like, okay, it's his problem and something is happening with him or her, and that is why this person is coming late, and make individual attribution is not the again the desirable way to arrive, and some disciplinary action needs to be taken, is not the proper way of seeing that person. So, what we have to do is we need to do some background check, and do, as people from OB practitioners, we need to do some background check and try to find out the real reason, and then try to attribute the characteristics either to situational factors or to individual factors. Now, if a person is coming late, is reported to be late by 10 to 15 minutes on a particular day, then how do we carry out this exercise of attributing the cause either to external situations or to internal situations? Then what we have to do is first find out the route through which that person is traveling, like from route from his home to office, and then try to find out like whether others are coming through that particular route or not. Now, when you get others coming through that particular route or not, then you try to find out the others who are coming to that through that particular route, whether they are also late on that particular day or not. Next, you try to find out whether like this person is late only today, or he has been late through some other previous days also. Next, we try to find out like whether this person is whether there have been some situational happenings, and what others have done in that particular situation. So, if you find like people others who are coming through that same route, taking the same way from near about locations, or has to pass through the same road while coming to office, if they are also late on that particular day when this person about whom we are making the judgment is late, then we tell okay, consensus is high. And if there is certain situational factors like sudden strike or certain things appearing, which is situation which is very distinctive from other normal day situations, and if you find like okay, this person is late only for today, but in others day he is on time, then we can attribute this cause to the situational factors and tell okay, the person is not late because he is prone to it's very internal to that person to come late to office. He is a general latecomer, but this can be attributed to the specific situations happening, and at that maybe at that particular day. But if you find like the others are generally not late, and there is no specific happening situational happenings on that particular day, and this person comes to office late quite often, like frequency is very high, then you can attribute it to the personal cause and tell it is his way of it's his part of his characteristics or her characteristics to come late, but it is the cause lies internal to the individual. Could be something which is very specific, it is the personality pattern of that individual, or his interest is not matching, or he may have some family problems or other problems which is very unique to that person's own reasons, and cannot be told like it belongs to other situational factors beyond his own self and other things. So, in that case you tell it to be internally caused. The attribution errors which are present, which are called fundamental attribution error. So, what happens? It is a tendency of people to underestimate the effect or situation of external or situational causes of behavior, and to overestimate the effects of internal or personal causes. And fundamental attribution error applies to the evaluation of someone else's behavior. And what we do, if someone else is successful, we attribute their success to the influence of external effect, but if they are failure, we tell it is due to the influence of the person's own personal characteristics. But the opposite things happen when we are talking of a self-serving bias. So, when you are deciding about our own self, what we try to do, we attribute success to our own self and we attribute failures to situational factors, and these can happen in different ways in different cultures. So, some of the organizational implications of perceptual and attributional biases, it occurs of course as we discussed earlier in employment situations. So, in interviews people make judgments which are more sometimes very inaccurate, and so like people try to form a very quick impression about others and they take the whole interview forward based on that first impression. If initially a negative impression is formed, it gets carried forward and you get weighted based on that negative impression formed. So, and different panel members view a single person in different light based on their maybe own backgrounds, own interests, own motivations, own personality patterns, and sometimes somebody tell it's a positive opinion, somebody it's negative opinion, and then you have to come at a relative weightage and come to certain decisional points. So, but what happens, agreement about the interview among the interviewer is very less sometimes, and so different people come at different conclusions about the same applicant. In problem solving and decision making, so while it comes to taking some decisions and the committee will blame other groups about some problems occurring, which is called the self-serving bias. So, then managers generally have tendency to reflect problems which tries to show their own competence, and they will try to identify problems in which they can show their own competence and not choose other functional areas, and and because they are not in their areas of their expertise. So, and in self-fulfilling prophecy, so what happens if a manager is expecting big things from his people, and so it is like what happens, they are not going to let him down. So, but if he is expecting low, very minimum from his people, they will try to meet those low expectations, and in sometimes it what happens, expectations become reality, and in that way you can really, this is a way of motivating people. If you set sometimes high standard for your colleague, your team members, and you try to motivate them, you try to make them believe like they can achieve those standards, they really perform well, and that is called a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the manager has set a high standard, means that person believes in the person's capacity to do that work, and these may lead to like some errors like Pygmalion effect, sometimes when one person inaccurately perceives a second person, and the resulting expectation, it causes the second person behave in ways consistent with the original perception. So, these are some of the effects, and ethnic profiling is of course a stereotyping effect about the ethnicity that we are concerned about, the ethnic group, and it sometimes lead to inaccurate decision making without intensive inquiry about the particular person that we are making a decision. Coming to questions, like questions continuing in the earlier chapter is like, what is perception? Describe in details with examples from daily life the perceptual process. What are perceptual selectivity and perceptual organization? What are the perceptual errors and distortions connected with these two processes? State ways of reducing perceptual errors. What is social perception? Relevance of attribution theory for understanding social perception. Short notes on impression management, attribution error. And if you are like utilizing the general principles of perception, organization, interpretation, and very careful about putting these causes on, telling okay, it is due to this, the cause is very internal to the person or external to the person, as we have seen in the attribution theory, and you are very careful about the impression management techniques somebody is utilizing, or you are even utilizing to manipulate or change the judgments like others form about you, or you are forming about other people. Maybe all these acts as tools for you to be much better, much equipped for perceiving people in social situations and in organizations, and it improves your capacity for person perception and making correct decisions in some situations where you have to decide about how to interact with people and how to get along with that people to solve some problems in hand and organizational issues, and for better performance for the person as an individual, as a group, and in totality the organization's performance. Thank you.